Thanks, Mindy. Okay, let's see if we can screen share. Thanks for that introduction. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. I don't know where you're all calling in from. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's 7 p.m. Eastern time. I know that you all have either been working and your day is over, or you're just finishing up. I'm going to try to be brief, concise. I'm going to try to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end, and we can get after it a little bit tonight. And I'll do a little bit of my background. Mindy did a nice job of sort of going through the long version, but let me just tell you a little bit about where I come from with respect to this topic. I think the most important thing to remember, we all listen to plenty of speakers and presenters who are either consultants or practitioners or researchers and academics. I spent half of my career in the field, and I then moved to the University of Virginia in Charlottesville in 2001, and really took the things that I learned and the challenges and issues that I faced in the field as a project manager, project executive, and business owner. I really took those into the classroom, and I started research. I started my PhD and started in my doctoral work thinking about how strategic planning is done. My doctorate is in strategic planning variation, and I'm really interested, and I have been interested since I moved into the academic side, in this idea of how complex organizations function. How do they make decisions, and how do they move forward? And I found myself as a chief operating officer and a senior executive defaulting to what I knew best, which is Agile. And I think that Agile principles are very timely now when you think about how to manage complex organizations. So my plan tonight is to go fairly quickly through the material, and then I will open it up for Q&A. So Mindy, can you tee up this first poll? We have two quick polls to share with you guys. So several core principles of Agile management is flexibility, adaptability, and responsiveness to change, preparing to change or planning to pivot. To what extent would you describe your organization's management style as Agile? Choose one, please. Are the folks that are here, can you guys see this poll, and can you check off to what extent you would describe your organization's management style as Agile? Okay, there's no responses. We're going to move on. Okay. So I don't know if you've ever heard the term VUCA, but my recollection and my use of VUCA comes from Harvard's use of VUCA, and VUCA means that the world today is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And in a VUCA world, I argue and I write about the idea that new methods are needed to manage organizations, that the strategy and the strategic management that we learned in business school 5, 10, 20 years ago is no longer relevant today. And the reason why that is because of since I've been in school, since I went to business school in the early mid-90s, communication, computerization, globalization, the speed of information flow has just changed the way businesses and organizations are managed. And it's because of that we need new ways to operate. So my quick plan today is I'm going to talk about learning objectives. I'm going to talk about something called signals from the field. I've noticed and have observed academics signaling that there's a new situation in the management of organizations today that needs to be addressed. And I also have a couple of quotes from practitioners as well. So I'm getting signals from the field that this new management approach needs to be found and needs to be tested. Then I'm going to talk quickly, and I'm going to be very brief about this, but sort of the basics of Agile and the basics of strategic management. And the basis of my thesis and the basis of my research is that bringing Agile and strategic management together. Okay. using, as Mindy said, the battle-tested approaches to managing teams using the Agile Manifesto or the principles of the Agile Manifesto, and combining them with strategic management principles, what I would describe as the 5 stages of strategy. We bring those together in something called Agile Strategic Management. Then I'm going to talk, and I'm going to spend a little more time today, more so than the rest of this background work, on case studies. I've worked with companies. I've got 3 or 4 case studies that I want to share with you. And what I'm trying to get to there is I want you to see that the application of Agile Strategic Management and that approach to managing complex organizations is easily translatable across many different industries and kinds of companies. So small companies, large company, or companies and organizations, for-profits and nonprofits, and large bureaucracies as well. So that's going to be the basis of the case studies, and I think you'll find those really interesting. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about Agile Strategic Management to wrap up, and then we'll get into Q&A. So I want for you guys at the end of this to have an understanding of this framework called Agile Strategic Management. I want you to learn how to consider using Agile practices and those principles in your own jobs. We're going to do the case study work. I don't have my leader practitioner interviewee who is going to join us is unable to be here, Sam Simmons. He's the CEO of a company called OEM Controls. But Sam and I have worked closely together, and I'll speak on Sam's behalf. And then we want to talk a little bit about how to apply Agile methods across the enterprise. So as Mindy said quickly, the first half of my career was as a real estate and construction executive. I founded a vertically integrated medical design build business, bought real estate, owned a property management company, and built a real estate and construction business that I sold off in 2000 and moved to the University of Virginia in 2001-ish, and was started as a chief operating officer in the McIntyre School of Commerce, and then moved to the Darden School of Business, and I'm now at the School of Education. And I have been, my role has been somewhat split in all cases. I've been the COO and an associate professor. I've been teaching at UVA since around 2006. And my passion now is sharing my experience in the field as an owner and practitioner, and now as a consultant and an advisor and an author. I'm just trying to share my experience. I've been out there for 40 years and I've seen a lot. And I think I have some good ideas on how to manage and how to deal with complex organizations. So I've written a book called Plan to Pivot. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I published that last year. I've written a dozen case studies, and that's what I've been doing. So to the signals that you hear, back to my sort of the plan for the day. What am I hearing in the field? Why should we look at Agile? What's the motivating factor behind this? Well, in the past, so Henry Mintzberg is arguably the father of contemporary strategy, certainly from the academic side. And Henry Mintzberg has moved in and out of strategic planning is really useful, and then he went through a phase of strategic planning is useless, and then he came back and said, well, strategic planning is necessary as a guide. But the point is that Mintzberg, while he was thinking about strategy, said that thankfully the idea of structured strategic planning has evolved into this idea of continuous learning. And one of the bases of the Agile Strategic Management framework is this idea of continuous learning, that everyone in the organization is a strategist, that everyone has a say, and that the distance from the CEO's suite or the C-suite in an organization to the point of sale or the point of delivery, the flatter that is, the more crisp and clean the feedback is back up to the decision makers from the field, the more effective and more successful the organization will be. Another scholar or scholars is Prahalad and Hamel, pretty well-known management scholars, who said contemporary organizations need to focus on dynamic capabilities. They need, again, continuous learning as core principles. So what I'm saying is that the scholars, the management scholars, are sending signals that something's going on, and that has piqued my interest. You can see in 2010, my dissertation was submitted and accepted in 2010. this was information that was starting to come into the management world in and around 2005, 6, and 7, but really started to catch fire, get some momentum around 2010, 2011. And I was one of those scholars who was talking about this. And then there was also some signals from the practitioners in the field. So Sanjeev Augustine, the CEO of Lightspeed, last year, or 2021, said our world is in a period of rapid change, business models being disrupted worldwide, and this disruption is accelerating. So the way businesses are run, the way organizations are run, the fundamental way to manage is being disrupted globally. And so it's calling us to say, what do we do? Okay, and what do we do is what I'm going to talk about in a minute. And the last thing is that Gerald, a professor at IMD, the International Management College in the EU, said, the journey towards Agile consists of breaking the success trap. And for those who don't know, the success trap is when people do the same things over and over again because they were successful in the past. And what happens is today, because business is moving so quickly, if you're not looking ahead and you're not staying ahead of change, you have the chance to get run over. What Gerald is saying is you can't rely on yesterday's wins or yesterday's successes. You need to continue to reinvent and find new things to do and build new products and innovate and be agile and flexible and scan the environment and see what the competition is doing, looking for opportunities. Okay, so that's what he's talking about, this idea of success trap. And the other thing that Gerald says, which I think is interesting, is this idea of increasing investments in some new products and killing the ones that aren't working. And the key to agile management is this idea of continuous strategy and looking for opportunities and then piloting things that look like they have potential, piloting them, investing in them, measuring outcomes, deciding if those things are having success. If they're having success, investing more in those. And that way you add layers of successful new products, new services, whatever they happen to be, within your portfolio. And that's how you build your portfolio today. It's a continuous process. And you got to not only invest in the ideas and the pilots that are working, but you also need to disinvest in the things that aren't working. So that's Gerald's point of view. I think it's absolutely spot on. So before we get into Agile too much, let's just talk a little bit about strategy. And for you who haven't been to business school, and for you that have been to business school or are running businesses, here's a quick review, no more than a minute. So you know the strategy is a plan or a perspective, right? Or a pattern of activities. And that in the strategic management textbooks and in the literature, in the strategy book of knowledge, strategy takes 5 stages, 5 phases or 5 stages. First, setting goals. 2 is analyzing markets and competitive position to figure out if there's an opportunity. Then formulating the strategy. Once you know the market, once you've set goals, you know where the opportunities are, is formulating your strategy, and then implementing your strategy, and then evaluation. Okay, so those are the 5 stages of strategy. And I'm going to get to how Agile and strategy align in a minute. I want you to also remember, as we just said a minute or two ago, strategic management evolved over time. And in general, strategy scholars agree that the sort of contemporary or modern strategic management theory, where events, organizations, performance was starting to be written about in an academic and scholarly way and in a structured way, started really in the 50s and 60s. And Mintzberg showed up around the early 70s. And strategic management went through this evolution, a very linear progression from prescriptive, which means here's what you need to do to be successful, or do these things and you'll be successful, to a descriptive phase, which is if you can create these outcomes, you'll be successful. So Mintzberg and his contemporaries, Hacks and Mintzberg and Michael Porter and those people, was saying, analyze your competitors, here's the outcomes you want to aim for. Now you need to get there. So this was this descriptive phase. And that we've moved into in the 21st century, this thing what I describe as a complex phase. And right now, what we're trying to figure out is how quickly can we adapt to very complex and very dynamic, fast-moving markets, okay? And that's the phase we're in. And so again, I'm going to go back to my thesis at the very beginning, which is there's a new world out there. There's a new condition. There's a new set of challenges. And in a new world with new challenges, you need new approaches. And so what I'm arguing is we are taking this from this more linear strategic management, linear thinking, to something that is more cyclical in nature and more continuous, okay? And for those of you who know anything about Agile project management theory, this logo in the right bottom corner, that Scrum logo or that Agile logo is very similar to what I think about when I think about this new model of managing. And what it is in my slide here, it shows implementation. Okay, so let's go to planning first. Planning, setting goals, looking for opportunities, including your customer in everything you do. Okay, flat organizations, look for opportunities, include the customer. Then implement. Try new things, test, and look for proof of concept. Again, test. If you have some success, invest. If there's no success, disinvest and move on to the next thing. Decide go, no go. If it's a go, you're going to need capital to seed fund these goes. Sometimes you can partner with your customer, but you need to have a kind of a war chest of venture capital to successfully follow this process. And then you have to hire specialized talent. All of you know it's really hard to hire good talent today, and particularly in an environment where you're trying to be really leading edge and you're really responsive to your customers. Getting the right people on the bus is very, very important. And then scaling. Once something hits and you've had some success, then scaling it is part of implementation. And then what I describe as adjustment is you have to measure output and measure performance. And measuring using, there are AI-based strategy measurement tools out there, BI, business intelligence tools, AI, artificial intelligence tools, that are designed to track performance, measure performance, and report back to the executive and the company, but give you data back on what trends are going. So how are trends going? Are we doing better? Are these products doing well? Is it adding value? Are we getting ROI out of these experiments and these pilots? And is that helping our business? And then being able to shift and being able to be very, again, agile, preparing and planning to pivot. That's what my book is about. Preparing and planning to pivot, being ready to respond to the dynamic conditions in the marketplace. Okay, so it's this evolution from linear thinking to cyclical thinking. It's one of the foundational principles under Agile strategic management. So for any of you who have done any Agile project management, you'll know that the basis for Agile project management is the Agile Manifesto. And the Agile Manifesto has 12 principles, and they are listed in the left side of this table. Continuous stakeholder engagement, prepare for change, et cetera, down to 12. Okay? So those are the 12 Agile Manifesto, the principles of the Agile Manifesto. Project managers, leaders, customers have been using Agile principles for over 2 decades. They are battle-tested. They are well-regarded. They are what I would describe as leading edge or gold, the gold standard for project management, particularly around IT projects, but not limited to IT projects. I used Agile principles in managing my design build business, managing construction projects many times. So I take the Agile Manifesto, and again, bringing it to strategic management, and I pop up the 5. So remember we said before, 3 slides ago when I was talking about strategy, the 5 strategic management stages. And I aligned them with each of the principles. In other words, when might you see continuous stakeholder engagement? You might have stakeholders involved in the goal setting, in the analysis, in the formulation, the strategy formulation, and in the strategy implementation. But preparing to change, you want to be prepared to change or planning to pivot when you're analyzing markets, when you're implementing. And so I try to align the Agile Manifesto principles with the strategic management stage that aligns with that. And then in the third column, I talk about the benefits of alignment, all stakeholders fully engaged, preparing for inevitable change, increasing the likelihood of meeting the owner's business goals, top-down support, et cetera, et cetera. And this grid, which I'm happy to send you. If you send me an email, I'll be happy to send. I'll be happy to send you the slide there. But this grid is really the heartbeat of Agile strategic management. This is where the alignment comes, and from the alignment comes the benefits, and the benefits are the things that we want to measure. Are our stakeholders engaged? Are we well prepared for change? Can we create scenarios, by the way, right? Planning scenarios. Can I work on scenarios and prepare for change? What's going to happen if A happens? What happens if B happens? What happens if C happens? And are we prepared to deal with A, B, and C? So you can figure out how agile you are, how ready you are, how flexible you are, and how adaptable you are to deal with rapid change. Okay? And so on and so forth down the line. So this is the grid and the underlying sort of foundation for Agile strategic management. Okay, let me just take a quick sip. Let me just see who's in the chat. I'm not missing anything. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about now is the case studies, and I'm going to use 4 examples. I'm not sure that I'm going to talk very much about the University of Virginia, but I have 3 companies that I want to talk about, and these 3 companies have moved from more traditional bureaucracy, more traditional hierarchy structure to an agile structure. And you can see that these are 3 very different companies. So the first one is Save the Children. Anybody that knows Save the Children, it's a UK-based philanthropy. It's a global philanthropy, and it raises money to support the needs of children globally. And they do grant work, and they send people out into the field, and it's a pretty dynamic organization. So that's the first organization we're going to talk about. Then OEM Controls, as I said before, OEM Controls controls a high-tech joystick manufacturing company. They build joysticks for heavy construction equipment, big farm equipment, bobcats, and smaller equipment, et cetera. They've been in business for, I think, 50 or 60 years, very successful private company. So I'm going to talk about OEM Controls. And then the third company down on the right is an extreme sports storage company, a little bit of a smaller player with challenges that might resonate with you. So smaller, medium, large, nonprofit, for-profit, medium, small profit, for-profit, small. Okay. So Save the Children, the VP for marketing, Gemma Sherrington, called, and I was friends with the CEO, and the CEO asked about, they were having some trouble. They were not growing. They were having retention issues, and they were what was described to me by the CEO as a misalignment of their mission and their marketing. So they weren't able to successfully translate the mission of Save the Children to the donors. This is where she thought there was some misalignment. And she was thinking about also that the world is moving very quickly. And just like every other industry, the philanthropic industry, the philanthropy industry, has the same problems that for-profit industries have. Is the idea that people are moving quickly. They have a lot of options, okay? Fundraising organizations are very sophisticated today. They run just like for-profit businesses, for the most part. They have a nonprofit mission, but they run like a for-profit. And she was feeling like they weren't evolving the business, the organization, to keep up with change. And so what they wanted to do was think about how Agile might help them. And fortunately, Gemma Sherrington, who I referred to before, her VP for marketing, had used Agile in the past. And so she was the Agile apostle at Save the Children. And she started talking about donor-centric focus, meaning you meet the donors where they are, like meeting the customers where they are if this was a for-profit business, including the customers in your strategy making, including donors in helping shape the mission and the ways that they raise money at Save the Children, and having the donors help them shape their messages as well. So this is what Gemma was interested in. And so using Agile principles, they flattened the organization. They made feedback part of staff meetings, part of the culture. They had stand-up meetings, just like in an Agile team meeting. She would have stand-ups all over the company. Lots of feedback, lots of communication, lots of flexibility, lots of face-to-face work. Face-to-face, by the way, is also another Agile principle. And then taking time at the end to reflect and think about how to move forward. So this is the challenge at Save the Children. This is the way they applied Agile principles. OEM Controls had a little bit of a different issue. So OEM Controls, as I said before, is a high-tech joystick manufacturer, and they do other things. They build software platforms for heavy equipment maintenance tracking and things, and performance tracking. But in any case, Sam Simmons is the president and chief operating officer, and he and I worked together on Agile at OEM. And the problem was that they were overwhelmed with engineering issues and many, many projects. So their customers needed new products. They were constantly evolving and revising and updating and modernizing their portfolio, their book of business. And that was the right thing to do. What Sam said to me is that it's really important for our customers to have leading edge technology, to have leading edge products, but it's really hard on the business to be constantly evolving the product line. And so what resulted from this sort of difficulty was a lot of waste and a lot of rework, and it was really hard to keep his arms around the business. It was like minimal accountability. Sales was doing sales, engineers were over there, the shipping guys were over there, and he said he had a pretty fractured organization. And so Sam is the chief Agile officer at OEM. He started organizing different people in departments as collaboration coordinators, and they are responsible to take notes, load the notes into Trello. We're going to get to that in a minute. Trello and Kanban boards, created communication records and recording communications and being able to look up communications. So being able to do a fast search on issues and products and customers. And so so just like Agile, I've been in the shop, and I've been in the office where people do stand-ups almost continuously. There are continuous stand-up meetings. Customer calls, there's a stand-up in engineering. We're having a problem with a joystick. Let's get the engineering people here. Let's get the product manufacturing people here. Let's get the design engineers together, and let's figure out how to solve the problem for the customer. Okay, stand up, fix the problem, record it, put it on a timeline, get moving on fixing it. Okay, that's the principles of Agile. And they record that information into a database, and they track and manage that information. Okay, and that's how they work. And that's really, really Agile. And so I've often been asked, well, how do we do this, Jerry? And how do we get started? And do we have to buy some new tools? And no, the answer is no. The answer is you got to get going. You've got to trust. You got to believe in Agile. You have to understand the principles of Agile, and then you have the tools right in front of you. You all know. I'm assuming that you know about Microsoft, like SharePoint, and using Microsoft Teams. And then Trello, those are pretty common, well-known, again, battle-tested tools. Excel is a pretty important player in recording and managing the data that's necessary to run your business in an agile strategic management way. What they do, as I show over here, they have, this is a data delivery discussion, an email from Sam to his team with next steps, a recap and next steps. They post all of these, notes on Kanban boards so that everybody in the company has access to them. So you don't have to set up a meeting with engineering or set up a meeting with the sales rep that's handling a certain customer or bringing in the executive in charge of technology. It's all in front of people, it's recorded, and it's sitting in Trello, and it's sitting on Kanban boards, and everybody's working together. And so I thought some of the really interesting things that Sam said. I asked him, what are the benefits of Agile? And he said, no good ideas fall on the floor, meaning people are vested in working through problems, recording information, right? Archiving, recording information, making it searchable, so that when what happens in meetings, as you probably know, is sometimes you have the greatest idea and it may not be relevant to the problem you're solving, but you've come up with some great ideas. Well, at OEM, they save those ideas. They put them on a Kanban board for future reference. So what Sam says is, by using these Agile principles, no good ideas fall on the floor. So all of the money and time that you invest in getting your teams together to really put their heads together to fix a problem, not only do you fix the problem, but you also fix future problems or other problems as well. So save that information and communicate that more widely around the organization. And he said one of the effects that he was really surprised at was that the engineers seemed really bought in, that the engineers really embraced the system, and that they were appreciated as problem solvers. Their communication was appreciated, and he felt like teams were coming together and teams were being built as a result of that. And so the team building aspect of this Agile transformation for him was palpable and significant. And then feedback loops are important. This idea, like the Agile, like the Scrum image or the Scrum logo, right? Feedback, pilot, test, measure, bring back, feedback to the team, go, no go, reinvest, next. Pilot, measure, feedback, go, no go, next. That is a strategic process that is alive and well at both Save the Children and OEM and the next case study. So my next case study is a company that I've worked with. They're a Virginia-based company, and they're in the extreme sports storage business. So you can imagine, excuse me, assuming you are, I would assume that you're familiar with California Closets. California Closets is the company that comes in and designs all the shelving and the hang rods and the drawers so that your closet is, super well organized and everything has its place. Okay. So this company does the same thing for extreme sports storage. So imagine you're, I'm assuming, a millennial or a younger, I shouldn't say that. If you're really interested in sports and you have skis and ski boots and ski poles, and you have a bike, and you have saddlebags, and you've got a basket, and you've got snowboard and snowboard boots, and so you have all of this gear. And when you go into somebody's, we've been in plenty of garages, right? And probably in yours and probably in your basement, there's piles of sports stuff everywhere. Well, this company has designed and created specialty storage bins, boxes, hooks, and hangers to store different kinds of extreme sports equipment. Hang your skis here, hang your boots here, hang your snowboards here and your snowboard boots here, hook your bike here, hook your hiking poles and your hiking boots here, and so on and so forth. And so their issue was that they design in Virginia. So they have engineering and design. They have design engineers and manufacturing engineers in Virginia, but they manufacture in Southeast Asia. No surprise. So they're really, and they're an e-commerce company. The majority of their product is sold through Amazon, but they also sell some direct, and they have some in stores, but they don't have a lot of brick and mortar stores. The vast majority of this is e-commerce. So their challenge is how to integrate what's going on in Virginia, design, what's being manufactured in Southeast Asia, with what's being manufactured, quality control tested, sent to Amazon and mailed to the customer, and then collecting customer feedback. Okay, how does that process work? And this company was really struggling with how to connect all those pieces. And they decided that they were going to create a shared platform, very, very agile. Bring your customer onto the platform, bring your vendors onto the platform so that everybody can talk to one another. So in Virginia, they can create a CAD drawing of a new part, a new SKU, a new hook hanger or backboard or whatever, basket. The manufacturers in Southeast Asia can immediately pull it up on their screens in their factories. They build a prototype. They overnight mail it to Virginia. They quality control test it in Virginia. They photograph it. They send the photographs, assuming it's okay. They set the price. They send the photograph and the manufacturing specs to Amazon. Boom, it goes up on their website. When the orders start coming in, they go directly to Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia starts manufacturing and sending boxes of quantity to Amazon. Amazon does the order fulfillment. Virginia gets the checks and the transfers into their account, and they manage the whole operation. So it's really a really leading edge, and I know other companies do this, but it's a leading edge e-commerce company that operates in a very agile way. And so what has happened, because they've applied agile principles, is that information is virtual. Everybody that's affected by information has up to the minute information, and there's no confusion. Everybody knows what's expected. And so their failure rates are very low. Their return rates are very low, and their success rates are very high, and their margins are great, and they're growing. They're growing. It's a successful company, very agile. And so this idea of full integration is a very typical agile idea, driven by the customer, driven by the ultimate purchaser of the customers. And the CEO said to me one day, we're an agile, we're an Amazon partner. We rely on Amazon, and because of that, we have to be agile. And so another success story. And I think I'm going to skip the poll because I'm not sure if the polls are going to be working. But we're pretty far into this now, and so I'm going to finish up. So, as I said in the beginning, my thesis is that we need a new approach, that Agile needs to be applied at the organizational level. And if you've read any of the Gartner IT technology newsletters or any of their white papers, increasingly companies are more and more project oriented. And I would argue that because things are more and more project oriented, that it makes Agile principles and the Agile approach even more relevant today. It's battle tested. We know how it works. And when you apply Agile principles across the organization, Agile HR really is talent management, recruiting talent, okay? Playing offense in HR, recruiting great talent, working hard at that, constantly working the HR pipeline. Finance being agile, raising capital, putting pilot and seed money together so you can do some venture capital work to finance these pilots and keep growing the portfolio. Agile finance. Agile IT is, agile and IT go together, two peas in a pod. But being agile, leading edge, investing in the next technology, in next year's technology, testing that out and staying out in front is extremely important in an in an agile framework. And so you can see that when you start to think about each of the departments almost as customers, that everybody needs to be working together in the organization, that when you do a project in an organization, you need talent. So you need HR at the table. You need money, so you need finance. You need IT because you need technology. So bringing those internal customers onto the project team and managing them in an agile way is what I'm talking about when you think about deploying Agile across the organization. So core principles of Agile strategic management: customers needs first, strong teams, invest in your teams, invest in your talent, collaboration and communication, that Agile, right? Pilot, test, deliver early and often. Pilot, test, and deliver early and often. Integration and communication, preparing for change, planning to pivot, and trusting in your people. Okay, so that's what I'm working on. That's what I've been doing. That's what I write about. That's my interest area. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody offline later, but what I want to also share with you is what I'm working on right now. So as I said, I published a book with these basic principles called Plan to Pivot, which is available at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. I think it's about $15. And then what I'm working on now is a handbook for Agile strategic management. So I've had a lot of clients come and say, you know what, Jerry, I really need a handbook so I know how to do this. And so I'm working on that. Probably a couple of months away, but it's being worked on. Another thing I'm working on is an Agile team platform. We're working with a team that's developing a platform that's going to create executive team tools that executive teams can use to make executive teams more agile. Some people have told me, and I've heard in the field, that, my boss isn't very agile, and so he or she isn't really, interested very much in Agile. Well, you know what? What we're doing is we're preparing handbooks, we're preparing platforms that you can use to help even the executive teams become more agile and learn to use Agile in the executive suite. And then we're also working with a large community of operations professionals. It's called the COO Forum. It's another. It's an organization of chief operating officers, and those people are really easy users. They're early adopters of Agile strategic management. And now what we've done is we've created tools that they can use, that they can roll out to their teams, that creates Agile reminders about, have you called your customer? Have you formed your team? Do you have expertise on your team? So it's an Agile planning and implementation platform for use by project team leaders, managers, executives, etc. And I'm also working on. I just got tapped for this week. Is somebody called me actually 2 days ago and asked about can I help create an Agile HR annual assessment tool. So this is a fellow who has a very agile company, and he said, Jerry, we're really agile and we've done the things that you've suggested and we're having great success. But what I want to do is base my annual reviews now on the Agile principles. Can you help me develop an Agile assessment tool? So that's what I'm working on now as well. So there's a lot going on. Signals from the field say we need a new model. Applying battle-tested framework like Agile to managing complex organizations in this dynamic world seems to make a lot of sense. Companies are having a lot of success with it. It needs an Agile advocate or an Agile apostle in the company in order to really make it go. So for some of you, you're going to have to convince your bosses that this is important and start to test it wherever you can test it in your company. And then once you get a couple of early wins, just like the change management literature says, get a few early wins with Agile, and the rest of the company will follow you. So that's that's the presentation part. I think about Plan to Pivot. So that's my book, Plan to Pivot, Agile Organizational Strategy in an Age of Complexity. I think about planning to pivot as a verb. It's preparing for the future. It's being flexible and adaptable, but I also think about it as a noun. It's planning to pivot. In your planning processes, prepare to pivot, right? It's not just about pivoting, it's about planning to pivot. And I think the preparation, the building of adaptability and flexibility within your organization is the key to success when things are very dynamic. And so building flexibility, getting really smart people around you, communication, bringing customers in, feedback, flat organizations, all of that matters. And that's the key to being agile. And so that's the end of my presentation. This is my contact information. You're welcome to reach out for me anytime you want. And I am open for questions. I'm going to stop screen sharing now so I can see who's ever on. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Feel free to unmute or type your questions in the chat box.
Thanks, Mindy.
You're welcome.
Hello, Jerry. Thank you for sharing your views from aligning Agile with the strategic management. And I'm Ranjani here, and I don't have any questions. Hi there. I don't have any questions actually, but I just wanted to share my perspective that it was really interesting and informative. Something that is unique and new. So I am an Agile practitioner myself, and helping teams in the Scrum and different frameworks in Agile. But from a strategic perspective, this is very insightful. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. Ranjani, what kind of a business are you in?
In IT, software. So
yep.
Yeah.
And are you an Agile practitioner in your IT work?
I am, yes.
Yep. So, and you was it easily recognizable how you could translate the Agile principles to management? It
was indeed. Yeah. It was, especially the cycle that you had, the cyclical process. That was quite simple and easy to map and understand, because we also have the portfolio management, where you have the planning, the big room plannings that happen, and all that. So how it scales up from bottom to top, and top to bottom, and some way it has to match. So yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep. I must say, I was a practitioner before I was an academic, and when I got into the business, when I started my business, and when I started to have some success and my business started to grow, I defaulted, as I say in my book, I was Agile before Agile was cool. Before the Agile Manifesto was the Agile Manifesto, I was doing a lot of the principles. I was executing my business or managing my business in a very similar way. I knew intuitively that being close to my customers and bringing them into the building, bringing them into planning, bringing them into discussions, having them talk to my people, both inside and outside the business, was really important. And so I was doing that kind of work. I was doing a lot of cost plus work when firm price contracts were much more in style. And I was partnering with my customers before a lot of other people followed the same approach to the building business and to design build, and primarily because I was in a very specialized field. I was in the medical design build business. That was my business. And there wasn't a lot of competition that had this expertise. So customers were more open to working in this sort of agile environment. So in any case, I started this in my business kind of because it was necessary. And then I saw the Agile Manifesto show up, and I saw the IT people starting to talk about, in meetings, they would say, we don't want contracts. We want to iterate, and we want to, good is good enough. If we can, so all of those early Agile principles, I started to hear them, and I said, whoa, that sounds a lot like me. And it was really interesting. And so this has all come together for me in that way. As I came out of the field, I was running a business. I found the need I applied things that I knew, tools that I knew in a different way. And then I've evolved it over the last 2 decades to where I am now, which is, I think this is in this environment with, very fast moving businesses and this very dynamic environment that this is the right moment for this. So thanks. I would love to know if we can start to work with Agile HR without a group to start to construct the project and then find a client, or it doesn't work. I would love to know if we can start to work with Agile HR. Yeah, I would. If the question, I'm gonna try to interpret that a little bit. I think that I would say to you that in all of those departments that I described at the end of my presentation, HR, finance, IT, risk management, I think you should be thinking about how can those departments be agile? How can they be more agile? And then how can we, as a business, which is a collection of these departments, how can we as a business be more agile? How can the leadership become more involved? How can the customers become more involved? So sure, I think the answer to this question from LinkedIn Live is, I think you should start to work in HR in a more agile way. I think you should think about where I would start is, how might agile principles impact HR? How might agile principles impact talent management, or the management of expertise, or the management of talent in the organization? I would start there. And then once you know where and how agile might affect talent management, then you can start to think about, if these are the parts of HR that would benefit from being agile, now I know that I can start to construct a model that's based on the agile principles. Okay, and I think you can do that same process and follow that same process in other departments across your organization. I hope that answered your question.
We got a thumbs up on it. It was from the LinkedIn Live.
Good deal.
We do have a question about, will the slides be shared?
I'd be happy to share the slides.
Okay.
Sure.
And if anybody's interested in them, just feel free to either shoot me a message on LinkedIn or email me. I will drop my LinkedIn and my email in the chat, in both of the chats for everybody.
Mindy, I'll PDF the slides and send them, or if you can just convert them to a PDF, that would be great.
Yep, just send them to me and I can convert them to a PDF.
Awesome. I think so there was another question about how agile principles might apply to UX, visual and graphic design environments. I think I answered that question with the answer that I just gave on the HR related question. I think in all of these areas where you're talking about specific areas within an organization like visual and graphic design, those areas are ripe for agile principles. I would approach it the way I described before, which is, if in the case of, let's say, graphic design, is look, if you remember that table I had where the left side of the table had the 12 principles, and then the second column in the table had the strategic management stages. Look at the agile principles and look at how your department, in this case, the graphic design department, might benefit by applying any one of those 12 agile principles to graphic design. You can basically then create your own agile graphic design approach, or agile graphic design department. Department's the wrong word, but approach to how you do the business, to how that business is done in that department. So any department within an organization can be agile. Any unit within a department can be agile. Any department can be agile. And I would argue that the sooner For me, because I'm an Agile advocate, the sooner you get Agile, the sooner you'll have better results, the more notoriety you will gain, because you will be outperforming other departments. I'm sure as I'm sitting here, I've seen it over and over again. Those Agile departments outperform the other departments. And the people who are in the Agile departments feel more challenged and feel more satisfied. Yep. How do you actively engage an organization strategically that thinks they're Agile but really hasn't embraced being Agile beyond the words? Yes, that's a great question, Sandra Evans. Thank you for that. It is funny, isn't it? Or ironic, if nothing else, that some of the people who say they're most Agile are not, right? And by saying you're Agile doesn't make you Agile. So I think the way that I would go about this, depending on where you are in the organization, what level you're at, and what access you have to whom, I would take things like this talk today. I would take things like the 12 principles of Agile, that the 12 principles in the Agile Manifesto. I might read my book, but I might take the things that we talked about tonight and the 12 Agile principles and start to test them in your organization. So I think the question is, how do you actively engage in organization? So one question is, how involved is my customer in the organization? So if I'm, I don't know, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but if you're a manufacturing company, do you bring the customer in and have the customer test products when they are in the pilot stage? Do you involve the customer in the alpha and beta testing of products when they go in the field? Does the customer give you feedback when you have an alpha and beta version in the field? So I think that's how you get there, is you start to create discipline around asking questions that are based on the Agile principles that you can find in the Agile Manifesto. I have found that when you use the principles in the Agile Manifesto, that people know what they are, and they automatically think that they are valid, and they are. They're valid, they're familiar, and they're recognizable as best practice. And so that's where you want to start from, is if you use the principles of the manifesto, nobody can argue that those don't work. So now if you buy that they work, let's test one or all of the principles, some or all of the principles in my company to actually start to measure how Agile we are, right? And that's the way to flesh out the folks who just say they're Agile, but they're not really, from that conversation. I hope that helped. That's a really important question, so thanks for that. Is it possible to apply Agile methodologies to computer system validation? I mean, I think we've said the same thing. The question is, you need to answer the question. If you're an expert in computer system validation, my question is, how useful are the Agile principles in computer system validation processes? And all I can tell you, because I don't know that particular bit of business, I'm not a technologist to that level, but what I will tell you is that in almost every case, in almost every industry I've worked in, either directly or as a consultant or as an advisor, in almost every situation, using the Agile principles in managing the work and in managing the business has absolutely been valuable and has absolutely been valid. So to me, I don't see any reason at all why it wouldn't work in your computer system validation issue or question. So what I'd like you to do is try it and write to me, try some Agile. So again, test the Agile principles against what your processes are called as computer system validation. How can bringing the customer into that process benefit the process and benefit your organization? How can preparing for change, preparing for the system to change, being Agile, how does that help you? how does that benefit your organization? And if you can test that in your example or your question here, and you test it and tell me what happened, send me an email and let me know how that went. I'd be really interested to hear from all of you that have been on this call. When you start to try these things out, if you'd send me a note and let me know how it's going, it would be hugely helpful to me. And I can then help you more offline when you're actually implementing Agile. I'd be happy to do that.